time ago, in a place far, far away, but not so very far, in the Queen Charlotte Islands, there lived a young chief and his beautiful bride, who he loved so very much. But soon after their wedding, the bride, with cheeks as red as salmon and hair as dark as the deepest parts of the ocean, became ill and took to her bed. And her eyes, which were deep and reflective and wise as Raven herself, glazed over with pain and surrender. The chief, terrified, sent out his very best canoes to summon the shamans from all the surrounding islands, and they came and administered their help and their healing and their herbs and their prayers, but alas, it was to no avail. And on one dark, moonless night, the Great Spirit came and sat on her chest and gathered up the last bits of her breath and took her across the Owl's Bridge to the next place. Well, the chief, after her death, was in horrible pain. And he immediately set out to all the surrounding islands, trying to get a wood carver to make a perfect likeness of his wife, for he needed her with him. And with each one, he would sit and very painstakingly go through, describing the curve of her back, or the way her eyelashes looked in a snowstorm, the way she laughed, the way she had little freckles across her nose. He would tell her stories, like when she caught a fish with her bare hands and let it go. And he also told them how he felt when he was with her. And one by one, each of them carved a likeness of her and revealed it. And he stood and looked and was profoundly disappointed, for none of them even came close to catching the image of his wife. And bereft and saddened and full of pain, he returned home to his own island and took to his own bed, where he became almost like an animal, unable to bathe or take care of even the smallest things. And the people of the town were worried, and they came around him, but they couldn't help. Until one day, a humble woodcarver from his own village came and sat by his side and said, "Chief, your sorrow sorrows me. And you have gone from place to place looking for someone who could recreate the image of your wife. But here's the thing. I have seen your wife, and I have seen you with your wife. And if it would please you, I would love to try to make a likeness of her." Well, the chief had very little hope at this point, but he thought it would do no harm. And he commissioned a big block of redwood to be brought from the mainland, because at that point they had no redwood trees on the Queen Charlotte Islands. And the humble carver took the block home and went to work. And every day he sat prayerfully beside that block of wood, and he thought about the chief's wife. And he thought about her eyelashes and the curve of her back and the darkness of her hair and the depth of her eyes. And she thought about her laugh and how the chief felt when he was with her. And piece by piece, he carved her out until the day came when he called the chief and his brothers around, and he unveiled the statue. And there, standing before the chief, was a perfect likeness of his beloved lost wife. And he felt that at some level she had returned to him. And she pulled the statue home, and he put it in the center of his hearth in his home. And there he dressed it in his wife's clothing, particularly in a robe that she loved that had embroidered seabirds all over the sleeves. And he fed the statue little bits of nuts and seeds and whale blubber. And most importantly, he sat quietly and prayerfully and companionably beside her, and he talked to her about his day, about his decisions, about how much he loved her. But still, on those anniversaries, on those dark moonless nights, the pain would get to him again. Because even though she was there, she wasn't really there. And he would cry. He would find himself around the base of that statue, hugging the bottom. And he would cry, sort of that cry of a man who is knowing deep, deep pain. Hiya, 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 hiya. As if his song could reach her across the Owl's Bridge. And sometimes when he would awake, he would find himself curled around the bottom of that statue, the base of which stained a dark color of red from the saltwater truth of his tears. And he sat like this with her day after day and month after month, until one day he thought he saw the statue move. And he called everyone to see, she's coming alive, she's coming back to me. And it wouldn't move, but it seemed something was happening with his statue. And one day when he was sitting beside it talking to her, just about the day, nothing special, he heard a groan deep within the wood. And it was the sort of groan that one would do if one was very, very unwell. And he realized that she wasn't happy standing there. And so he got his brothers and his cousins, and he said, we must move her. She's not happy. And so each of them got around the base, which was now very, very heavy. And they pried and they pulled and they tugged and they finally started moving it inch by inch, and all at once an enormous crack up the front of it, and the whole thing fell into pieces on the floor of the chief's hearth. And there, underneath the statue, grew a small red cedar tree. And that red cedar tree grew and grew and grew and grew, being watered generously by the saltwater truth of the chief's tears. And to this day, when people visit the Queen Charlotte's Islands and they see these great, beautiful redwood trees all around, they say, ah, that one, that must be the chief's wife's baby. For she was beautiful, and his love for her was beautiful, and their beauty begot more and more and more beauty. And now the chief no longer needs the statue. He no longer needs that physical image, because she comes to him in his dreams, and it is there that they have marvelous conversation.